Before we begin, if you enjoy mysterious and spine-chilling stories, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. It helps the channel grow and reach others who love the thrill of the unknown. Now, let's dive in. Welcome to Echoes in the Dark. Have you ever been haunted by a memory? Not a nightmare, not a regret, but a person so vivid in your mind, yet absent from everyone else's. This is Kevin's story, a tale of nostalgia, mystery, and a creeping sense that reality is not as solid as we believe. It all began on a crisp autumn evening. Kevin, now 25 years old, found himself back in the same small town where he had grown up. He was attending his high school reunion, a chance to reconnect with faces from the past. The gathering was lively. Laughter echoed in the hall as old friends swapped stories, remembered embarrassing moments, and marveled at how time had changed them. Kevin was in the middle of reminiscing about a school play they had performed when he casually asked a question. "Hey, does anyone know what happened to Linda?" And that was the moment everything shifted. A strange silence fell over the group. Faces that had been animated with laughter now looked blank. "Linda?" someone finally asked. "Yeah, Linda," Kevin repeated, his voice tinged with surprise. "She was in our class, really kind, always helping everyone out. Remember the time she stepped in for Martha during the play when she got stage fright? Linda saved the whole performance." But instead of nods of agreement, he was met with confusion. Martha, who was part of the group, tilted her head and said, "I remember that day, but it wasn't Linda who helped me. It was Sarah, wasn't it?" "No, it was Linda," Kevin insisted, a tinge of unease creeping into his voice. Another friend chimed in. "I don't think we had anyone named Linda in our class." Kevin blinked, his mind racing. How could they not remember her? He brought up another memory, Linda helping organize a surprise party for their math teacher. Again, the others remembered the event but credited someone else. The same pattern repeated with every story he shared. Everyone agreed on the events, but no one remembered Linda. By the end of the night, Kevin felt a strange mix of confusion and dread. Linda wasn't just some faint memory. She had been a central part of his school years, a kind, selfless friend. How could everyone else have forgotten her? Determined to find answers, Kevin began contacting classmates who hadn't attended the reunion. One by one, they all said the same thing. There was no Linda. The more he pressed, the more he began to question his own memories. But there was one person he hadn't spoken to yet: John. John had been the quietest boy in their class, keeping mostly to himself. Kevin hadn't been particularly close to him, but he remembered that John and Linda had often worked together on projects. When Kevin called, his heart pounded as John answered. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Kevin hesitated before asking, "Do you remember Linda?" To his immense relief, John's voice lit up. "Linda? Of course I remember her. She was one of the nicest people in school. Why?" Kevin's chest tightened. He wasn't crazy. Linda had been real. Someone else remembered her. He and John spent hours reminiscing, sharing details about Linda, her laugh, her kindness, the way she always seemed to know when someone needed help. But even John admitted he hadn't thought about her in years. "It's strange," John said. "I can picture her so clearly, but I don't have any photos of her or anything written by her. It's like she just vanished." Kevin couldn't let it go. He became obsessed with finding proof of Linda's existence. He scoured the internet, searching for her name, old photos, anything, but there was nothing. It was as if she had been erased from history. Finally, in a desperate attempt to find closure, Kevin decided to visit their old school. Walking through the halls brought back a flood of memories. The sound of lockers slamming, the smell of chalk dust, the echoes of laughter. But there was no trace of Linda. He spoke to several teachers, hoping they might remember her. Most of them smiled fondly as they recounted stories of his classmates, but shook their heads when he mentioned Linda. Just as he was about to give up, he ran into Mr. Thompson, their old history teacher. Mr. Thompson was one of the few teachers Kevin had truly admired. When Kevin asked about Linda, he was stunned by the response. "Linda? Oh, yes, I remember her. Sweet girl. She was in my class for 2 years. Kevin felt a wave of relief. You do? Can you tell me anything about her? Mr. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. She was very bright. In fact, she wrote an incredible essay for an assignment about imagining the future. I remember it because it was one of the best I've ever read. I think I still have it in a box somewhere. Kevin's heart raced. This was it, the proof he had been searching for. Mr. Thompson led him to a dusty storage room and pulled out a box filled with old papers. They sifted through it together, finding essays with familiar names. But when they reached the end of the pile, there was no essay by Linda. Kevin frowned. Are you sure it was in here? Mr. Thompson looked puzzled. I could have sworn... Wait, who's Linda again? Kevin froze. You just said you remembered her. Mr. Thompson blinked, his expression shifting to confusion. I'm sorry, Kevin, but I don't recall anyone named Linda. Are you feeling all right? Kevin's stomach churned. The essay was gone. The teacher's memory of Linda had vanished right in front of him. Kevin left the school feeling more lost than ever. Linda was slipping away, even from the memories of those who had once known her. It was as if reality itself was conspiring to erase her existence. But Kevin couldn't forget. Her kindness, her laugh, her presence, they were burned into his mind. He never found an explanation, never uncovered the truth. All he had were memories of a girl who had been so real, yet so impossible to hold on to. Some nights, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, he wondered, was Linda a Mandela effect, a figment of his imagination, or something else entirely? He would never know, and maybe that was the scariest part. The night was silent, except for the occasional rustle of leaves against the window. Noah stirred in his sleep, restless. He wasn't sure what had woken him, a sound, a shift in the air, or just the eerie feeling that something wasn't right. And then he heard it, the faint creak of the bathroom door. Noah sat up slowly, blinking in the darkness. His wife, Emily, was stepping out of the bathroom. She moved quietly, her silhouette framed by the dim moonlight filtering through the curtains. Her movements seemed deliberate, almost mechanical. "Emily?" he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. She didn't respond. Instead, she stopped halfway between the bathroom and the bed, her figure frozen in place. Noah felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Something was off. "Emily, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice now sharper, tinged with concern. She turned her head slightly, her hand trembling as she raised it, pointing toward the bed, and then she screamed, a blood-curdling primal scream that sent chills racing down Noah's spine. He followed her gaze, his eyes darting to the bed, and what he saw made his blood run cold. There was someone lying there, someone in his wife's spot. Noah leapt out of bed, instinctively moving to Emily's side. His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the figure now sitting up on the bed. Slowly, almost languidly, it straightened, like someone waking from a deep slumber. The figure turned its face toward them, and Noah's breath caught. It was Emily, another Emily. Noah stumbled back, his mind reeling. There were 2 of them, 2 Emilys, one standing beside him, trembling, clutching his arm, and another sitting on the bed, staring at them with wide, horrified eyes. What is this?" Noah stammered. The Emily on the bed screamed, her voice filled with the same terror that the Emily beside him had moments earlier. The room was a cacophony of cries and confusion. Noah didn't know what to do, his mind unable to process the impossible scene before him. And then, as abruptly as it had started, the chaos ended. The Emily on the bed began to fade, her edges blurred, her form becoming translucent. Noah could see the outline of the pillow through her face, her hands, her body. And then, with a final, haunting cry, she vanished. Silence. Noah and Emily stood frozen, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Without a word, they bolted from the room, running down the hallway. Emily clung to him, shaking uncontrollably. That night, she slept in their son's room, while Noah spent the rest of the night on the couch, staring at the dark ceiling, too afraid to close his eyes. Weeks passed, but the memory of that night lingered like a shadow over their lives. They didn't speak of it, not directly. There were no answers, no explanations. It was easier to pretend it hadn't happened. Until it happened again. It was the 7th week since that night. Noah was in a deep sleep when he was jolted awake by the sound of loud, insistent banging on the bedroom door. His eyes shot open and he bolted upright in bed. The door was closed, a strange detail that immediately unsettled him. They never slept with the door closed. Emily stirred beside him, her eyes wide with fear. "Noah, what's that?" The banging grew louder, more desperate. "Let me in!" a voice screamed from the other side. Noah froze. It was Emily's voice. His eyes darted to the bed, to the woman lying beside him. She was pale, clutching the blanket tightly, her own voice trembling. "Noah, what's happening? I'm right here." The banging continued. "Open the door!" the voice cried again. Noah's fear melted into determination. He had to know. He had to see what was happening. He leapt out of bed and rushed to the door. His hands fumbled with the lock, and as he opened it, his heart stopped. Standing there was Emily. But her face was different, not in appearance, but in emotion. It was twisted in terror, her eyes brimming with tears. "Noah," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's me." Behind him, the Emily on the bed let out a scream. Noah turned just in time to see her clutching her head, her body beginning to blur and fade, just like before. Her cries echoed in the room until she disappeared completely. Noah turned back to the Emily standing in the doorway. She was shaking, her hands gripping his arms. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the neighbors came, drawn by the screams. Noah couldn't explain it, not to them, not even to himself. After that second night, Noah began to notice changes in Emily, small at first. She had always been allergic to peanuts, but now she could eat them without any reaction. She had always been right-handed, but now she used both hands with equal skill. Her family noticed it too. At a dinner with her siblings and mother, they shared stories from her childhood. But Emily didn't remember them the way they did. 4 out of 5 memories were either unfamiliar to her or had details that didn't align. Noah tried to rationalize it, to dismiss it as a trick of the mind, but the doubts grew. He found himself staring at her when she wasn't looking, searching for differences, for cracks in the facade. He thought about the nights they'd experienced, the screams, the disappearances. He thought about the Emily who had faded away, and the question began to gnaw at him. Had the real Emily disappeared that first night? Had she been replaced by someone else, someone from another reality? When he asked her about the incidents, she looked at him with genuine confusion. "Noah, what are you talking about? That never happened." But it had. He knew it had. And every time he looked at her, he couldn't shake the feeling that the woman he loved, the woman he shared his life with, might not be the same. Was she a stranger? Or was she still Emily, just different? Noah didn't know, and he wasn't sure he ever would.